Start recording and go live. All right, here we go. Firing it up live. Making sure we're good to go. Connections are online. Okay, perfect. What is up, everybody? Welcome to this week's Thursday Live with your hosts, both Ali and I. Today, we're going to be talking about how much square footage is required for a successful Ninja program. And a couple quick announcements for you guys. So one of the great things that we're excited about that's going to be more value for you is we are currently in the process of getting a website up. And what we want to have over there are all of our resources, our content, and some blog posts for you guys. So that way, if you do miss these lives and you want to go further into detail with where can I get more of this information, where can I get the in-depth details, the blog post, for example, where I'll be writing more in detail on some of these aspects we mentioned in the live. All of that will be hosted on our website. Okay, so that'll be ninjagymacademy.com. You guys can go there to get that information. We will post when it's live. It's not live yet, but we just wanted to give you something to look forward to. So without further ado, let's get into today's topic. So today's topic is always we get the question, how much space do I need to start my Ninja program? And the answer is, it can vary and it depends on what you're looking for. But I think what you'll find is it's shockingly way less than you originally thought it would be. And so what I mean by that is we mentioned last week minimum viable product, and you guys are going to hear us talk about this over and over again until we're blue in the face. And that is because it's very important. And so what we want to hammer home for you guys is with minimum viable product, it's okay, what is the minimum amount of space that we can allocate to get this up and running? That means maybe the space that you're running in doesn't have, a bunch of birthday party rooms. It doesn't have a locker room. It doesn't have, 1,500 bathrooms. It doesn't have tons of actual extra space. Okay. It just has maybe one bathroom, maybe two bathrooms. You got just enough room to run a class and maybe a space for parents to sit, maybe a space for spectators, and maybe a space for front desk. Okay. So we're talking minimum viable product. Okay. For a space like that, we want to look at something maybe between ideally 1,500 and 2,500 square feet. All right. And most of what you're using that space for is going to go directly towards, guess what? The class space. Now, why do we start there? Here's the thing. I mentioned in a previous video, the size of the building is directly correlated to the difficulty in which you have with running it. What I mean by that is if you get a really, really large square footage, you are purposefully looking for a larger return in the program, but that is going to come with an increased difficulty. Okay. So the bigger space requires more skill sets to run. So you have a greater return off of the program, but ultimately this is about the minimum viable product. And so for people coming to us, and bear in mind the square footage that I gave you guys is directly going towards, maybe you're setting up a program right from the beginning. You don't have a space already. This is like, hey, I want to open up a Ninja Gym and just a Ninja Gym. That's kind of what I would be looking for. Maybe somewhere in that neck of the woods.
I mean, and if you're talking about if you have an existing space, maybe you run adult fitness or maybe you run a gymnastics facility, and you have an additional, anywhere from like 800 to 1,000 square feet, you can absolutely be launching a Ninja program and generating more revenue out of some space that you're not really even using that well.
So,
something that go for it.
I was going to just say, I wanted to attack on what Ali was saying there with the fact that if you do have a space already, like let's say you're running a gymnastics program, you'll need less overall space. And that's because you've already allocated space for things like bathroom and front desk and spectator area. So when Ali's giving a reduced number there, she's just simply alluding to the fact that those facilities that already have space are already allocating space for things like restrooms and things of that nature. So that's why it goes down substantially, because it's like, look, as long as we have an open area in which we can run classes in, that's primarily what we're going to be looking at.
Yeah, it makes me think about the first gym that we had in Albuquerque at Ninja Fitness Academy. I mean, we had this immaculate building. It had mezzanine and birthday party rooms and staff rooms, and we had a weight room, and we had all this additional space, right? And the facility was amazing, and it was immaculate, and it was definitely caught people's attention when they walked in the door, and that had a wow factor to it. But the reality was we really only made money out of this 3,000 to 2,500 square feet where we had our ninja rig, right? Where we were like actually running classes. And everything else was like this just additional cost that wasn't actually really generating us revenue in the way that it should have been. Right. So, we had this incredible, amazing 7,000 square foot space, but did we really need that much? And I think like reflecting back on it, if we were able to go back and do it again, and we talk about this a lot, but if we were able to go back and do it again, then we would probably like go with half the amount of,
Mm-hmm.
space. And that's where we're coming up with that, 2,500 square feet number of kind of this micro boutique ninja gym with a very small amount of space, but it ultimately helps you get to profitability faster.
Right. And that's kind of the main thing is I think a lot of times when people go in and look for a space when they're setting up their program, they have the tendency to look at it as this is the final space. This is the only space I can rent for the remainder of my time with the program. That's just simply not true, right? You want to have a space that you feel you can knock it out of the park with, be very successful, leverage the success of that small space into a larger space at that point. That's why it's like you go and you sign maybe a lease for a year to 3 years, something to that effect, in a space of that size, and you're bursting at the seams with 150, 200, 250 students. Now you have profits to leverage you into the next opportunity. And if you need to like
Or
borrow
just
money,
open an or even just open another smaller facility,
yeah.
right? Maybe on the other side of town with a different demographic, right? You can service different people still with that micro model, and leveraging your first program to get into that next building.
But the point is you have options, right? Like that's
Yeah,
really the
right.
point is if you want to go bigger, you can go bigger. If you want to go to multiple locations, you can go to multiple locations. I look at places like Starbucks, McDonald's, a
Mm.
lot of the famous franchises that have gone around and been really successful. Panda Express is another one that comes to mind. Chick-fil-A, where they've come and they've leveraged, yeah, they might have a decent sized space. They come in, they buy the land, and then they really start to hammer home the profits of the company because now they have the business on top of land that they own, on top of a building that they own, and then they're leveraging the business model to kind of create more streams of income through things like real estate by
Yeah.
owning the real estate. And so what I'm saying is that if you come in and you have a small program that's profitable, you have the option to now start saying things like, okay, cool, I'll use the profits to go get a loan. Versus if you go into a big space and yeah, you might have double, triple the revenue in a bigger space, but you're still not profitable. You've got this huge team, you're $40,000-$50,000 just to break even every month versus the guy down the street's only doing 25,000, but 10 or 15 of that's profit for him. Those are those are two very different situations. And the guy who's at 25,000 with 10 to $15,000 of profit has way more power to leverage into bigger and better opportunities with the program and with his business than the person than who's up the street at 50,000, 40,000 a month, somewhere in that range, and they're just struggling to make ends meet. It's like you look
Yeah.
at the revenue, you go, oh man, I really want the bigger space. But the reality is that this person over here to the left has they don't have as much potential, but what's great is they can cap their potential out in the short term and then use that potential, that short-term potential, to then leverage into long-term potential versus the person who buys the big space says, forget the short-term potential, I want to go all out for long-term potential now, but then they don't have the skill sets to run it properly. And I could tell you as a matter of fact that we speak to people all the time in the industry, and maybe you have the skill set to sell that many classes, maybe you have that skill set to price it accordingly and get all those things correctly, but maybe you don't know how to run a team, right? And so it's like
Mm.
you may have full classes, you've got the right business model, but you can't find staff to save your life to run all these classes that you have. And then you're struggling to make ends meet because now your revenue's dying out. You got a bad reputation because coaches aren't showing up to classes. So it's not as straightforward as I think people want it to be.
Mm.
So it's like if you start with
And
something
a lot of
small, go
Yeah,
ahead.
I
Yeah.
mean, a lot of people are like, they're in this stage where they have wait lists, right? And they're like, oh, it's so good that we have wait lists. And it's like,
Yeah.
but that's not revenue that you're actually collecting on. And the reason why you have a wait list is because you can't get a staff member in there to actually open the class and generate that revenue, right? Um,
I think of like a case in point for us out of our personal experiences. Ali mentioned earlier that we had done our initial gym, which was 7,000 square feet, and only about 2,000 of it was allocated to Ninja. And then we went to
yeah.
another gym, and it was split between gymnastics and Ninja. But you you could easily, both sides were making money, both sides were bringing in revenue, I meant to say, but Ninja was maybe 2,000, 2,500 square feet only, and we had really learned a lot more about how to optimize, how to run our classes, how to structure the equipment, like how we exactly wanted to run this business. And that time we crushed it with a program that was double the size the one we had in the 7,000 square foot space. And that was
Yeah.
just because we didn't know what we didn't know. We didn't know how to optimize that small spacing. And come to find out, we could fit 500 kids in a 2,500 square foot space. And it kind of like, that's when it dawns on Allie and I that we look back and we go, why would we go buy a 7,000 square foot building when I could get 400, 450, 500 kids in a program that's 3,000 square feet? Like, that's going to crush it. Versus if I go to something that's 7,000 square feet, yes, I have a higher potential within that business model, but actualizing that potential is
Mm,
way more challenging than you understand until you've been there, until you've done that. And I can tell you,
yeah.
I've looked at hundreds of gyms' revenues, their structure, how many students they have, how many staff they have, and virtually all of them. I mean, there's a very, very, very small percentile that are an exception to this, but virtually all of them have super inflated payrolls because
Yeah.
they do not have the structure, they don't have the staffing systems to deal with the demand, and they don't know how to manage and run that team appropriately. And if you start to change that around, change that structure around, you're going to destabilize the entire program. So people don't want to touch it because they're like, look, if I change things around, if I lose coaches, whatever, like that's going to be
Yeah.
hurtful to my revenue and my business and ultimately my ability to fulfill my classes. And they are correct. They are totally correct. But it's so much easier to shift the dynamics when you have a smaller program. And like Ali said, like maybe you have two small programs. I'm a big believer in fractured leadership in the sense that you want to have one person running a small program over here and another person running a small program over here. Okay. And that way, there is less to manage for each of your leaders, and you're
Mhm.
overseeing just both leaders. Versus if you
Yeah.
try to have one person oversee a 700 kid program, again, that's a substantially higher level of difficulty than, say, one person running a 300 kid program, and then you have two people running two 300 kid programs.
There's also a higher level of accountability, right? Of just that one person being in charge of those 2 or 300 kids.
Yeah. So ultimately, to answer the question, right, and it's all this is just supporting evidence of how to answer the question of how much square footage do I need in my ninja gym. Frankly, it's as little as you can possibly get away with. Now, I say this with a caveat. Yes, tiny closet style programs are going to suffer. Okay, students are going to be on top of each other. Equipment's not going to be able to go anywhere. Your variety is going to be very, very much limited. So there's a minimum level for entry, right? And that's where we would say around 800 square feet.
Sure.
You would be surprised how much creatives and great classes you can come up with in a space of that size. Now, I also say that with the caveat of I wouldn't expect that to be my final ending point for how big I want my space to be. I would
Mhm.
like to get up into the several thousands of square feet. So, yeah, I might start at 800, but that's with the intention in a year or two to upgrade, or maybe,
Well,
you know,
especially
3 years out.
yeah, I mean, especially, like, if you're in the position of you already have a gymnastics, cheer, dance,
Right.
martial arts facility, and, you really wanna maximize this back corner that's not making you any revenue. I mean, that is that minimum viable product is really best served for that particular kind of situation, right? When you're just trying to do ninja alone, you definitely need a little bit more space. I also think that there's, with ninja, there's a couple things of like that smaller space. You might be limited to your storage, right? Of not having enough spaces to put things. You could
Mm.
definitely get very creative with like I remember we had three warped walls, so we had like a 14, a 10, and a 12, and we had like cut out the center of it, and it was like this walk-in closet where we could just like store obstacles and stuff like that, right? So that was a super creative way. Even if you had a very small space and you had a warped wall and you needed a place to store some extra obstacles or whatever, that's a great option for coming up with some creative ideas to store some extra things with this smaller model that we're talking about.
Yeah, and to to Ali's story, warp walls are naturally hollow. She was just
Yeah.
referring to the center of the side, so that way you could walk in and it'd be like a
Yeah, we
doorway.
like cut a door out of it or whatever. It was cool.
Yeah, but that's like she said, there are a lot of creative ways to store bars and things like that to kind of modify around the obstacles that you have access to. But ultimately, I hope you guys see through this live today that if you're considering opening up a ninja gym or a ninja
Mhm.
program, that you don't need to go crazy. As a matter of fact, you're going to be better to stack the chips in your favor where you can crush something, use the success from the thing you crushed to leverage you into the next best opportunity and grow from there.
Yeah.
It
And go for it, Charlie.
no, finish the thought because I was just going to tell him to if we could help him with that.
Yeah. So, something that I did want to touch on before we wrap up today was kind of the height of the building. This is just a question that
Oh
we get a
yeah.
lot, of, like
That's a good one.
how high do the ceilings need to be? And usually, kind of that base minimum is around like 14 feet for the height of the ceiling. That's just going to allow you to be able to have like some obstacles are going to demand that higher ceiling space for swinging and lashing and even like a 14-foot ward wall. But usually that's kind of what you're looking for is like that 14 feet. A lot of people are like, oh, I need to find a building that has at least 22-foot high ceilings. And sometimes that could just be really hard to find if you don't have enough industrial type warehouse space in your area.
Yeah, that's a great pointer. And the reason she says 14 feet, guys, is because in Ninja you have the 14-foot warp wall. It's actually 14 and a half feet technically speaking. So in that situation, you would basically have the wall going all the way up to the ceiling, right?
Yeah.
And so it's not ideal. Obviously, you want to be able to have a better like setup for your wall. But again, this is minimum viable product. And I've definitely seen formats where the wall will just run all the way up to the ceiling and kids run up and grab and then kind of come down the wall. That
Mm.
works really well. Okay, it's not ideal. It'd be a lot cooler to get on top of it, and many of the ninja comps that you go to, that will be a requirement for the obstacle is to be able to actually get on top of the warp wall,
When you
for the
can have a
point.
smaller option, right? Like a
Yeah,
12 foot, a 10 foot, so they can learn how to do that type of skill set of
yeah,
getting on top of the wall.
right. But then also like Ellie was saying, having the space for obstacles with high clearings. Maybe you're throwing high laches. You got a salmon ladder. I don't know, whatever obstacle you've got that may be going up higher, rope climb, things like that. Those are going to be nice to have that additional ceiling height to have room to maneuver and room to make things happen. So,
Something Sorry. So something that we're like really on a mission to help expand Ninja and help get gym owners who, maybe run other programs that want to add Ninja an option that is actually, financially viable for you to get a Ninja course that's not going to break the bank. We have this super cool Ninja setup. We're going to talk about it a little bit more in depthly next week on Thursday. But we have a rig. We call it the hybrid rig. So it's kind of a mix between that aluminum trussing and your regular standing rigs, which brings down the cost a lot. And the point of entry, paired with like a super cool obstacle package with the plastic obstacles that are going to last you a long time. Shout out to Custom Design Crafts with Brian. He is the man. So if you guys are interested in, seeing kind of what a minimum viable product course would look like, what it would cost, what kind of obstacles you're interested in, definitely join us next week on Thursday because we're going to kind of break down that specifically of what that looks like. But our main goal is to be able to give you like a ninja gym in a box, right? So you have everything that you need from the obstacles to the lesson plans to the business model, everything that you're going to need to essentially start this ninja program in your facility, even if you have no experience. So if that's something that you're interested in, definitely join us next week. And if you want to comment ninja in this video, then we can kind of send you some resources and then tag you in that video when it does go live.
there you go. So there you have it. Comment Ninja, and we'll give you guys the the lookout next time we start talking about the actual equipment setup. Like Ali said, that'll be a future
Mm.
live where we talk about that. Also, if you are in the process of considering opening up a Ninja gym or a Ninja program or adding one on, we are here to help you. Okay, we have a ton of resources in there to help you guys with that. All right, so we'll reach out in the comment sections. If you write out Ninja below, we'll actually reach out in the comment section below to give you like those resources, like Ali said. In addition, just find out a little more about your situation, what you're trying to do, and show you, like, we're going to have some phenomenal resources coming out in the future of like case studies where you guys can actually see programs that we've worked with, and the intricate details of like kind of the step-by-step of like what happened, how it played out for them, how we've
Mm.
helped them sell out these programs before they even opened it, and
Yeah.
kind of how we'll help you guys do the same thing, and establish some really successful thriving ninja programs like we've done so many times before. It's a great opportunity, especially for people out there who have kids programs already, or maybe you have an adult program and you want to add some kids on. There's just tons of options. So in the interim, we'll see you guys next week, and also reach out if we don't have you in the group, because there's going to be some great resources we'll drop in our group as well. All right, so God bless. We'll see you guys next week. Later.